The Goalie's Anxiety at the Penalty Kick was really my first film, and to fly with it to New York and present it at the MoMA, do my very first interviews in English, and stay in New York for the very first time, that was unbelievable. I think I was here for 4 days. I don't think I slept for 1 second. It had a short life, that film, because I had put all the music I loved into it. And you see, I was quite naive. We made it for German theatrical use and television in Germany. So all the music rights I had only acquired for Germany and theatrical for a number of years. I didn't think the film was, nobody thought films had a longer life. I mean, so I acquired Elvis and Roy Orbison and Van Morrison and Creedence Clearwater for just a couple of years. And after that, the film was practically dead. It had a glorious time in New York and was shown for a while, even got distribution later on. But then we had to stop it because to reacquire all those rights for international territories would have cost more than the entire film. So it is only now, 40 years later, that we freed the film again. I had always produced my films myself, so I always owned them, which is of course great, you can control them, but the drawback is that anything you own you can also lose. And in 2000 I actually lost possession of my entire work. Long and sad story. And then for 10 years I just watched the movies. They were still distributed, but they were owned by a big commercial company. And these commercial entities are not so much interested in restoration, because that means to invest, and they rather exploit it. And then after 10 years, finally, my wife and I, we had the cool idea not to buy it back, because I wasn't so interested in personally owning my work again. That had gone wrong already twice. And I don't think it's an ideal form for movies to survive, to be owned by somebody. I think it's better if they own themselves. And the only form that allows work to own itself is a foundation. So it took us 2 years to collect all that money with the foundation to acquire each and every movie back. Now they're all owned by the foundation, and the foundation so far has already restored 8. When you get into restoration and you really realize it's a whole craft, and you realize the mistakes you can do, you can over-restore it, so all of a sudden it looks as if it was shot today and it was digital, and that is, of course, not what we wanted. So the basic idea was to make it look as good as it could have looked in the first print. So any hairs in the gate that were in the first print, I left them in, because I figured, well, we could take them out, but in that first print they were there. So we kept all the grain. We stabilized the image a little bit, because the 16mm image always jumps a little bit, especially at every cut, so we stabilized it. I thought that was an improvement that was pleasant for the eye. And every scratch and stuff, of course we did our best to take it out. But on the other hand, we still like to give it that film look, not work against it, but really bring it out as good as possible. Scan it in 4K, but as it's 16, we've finished it in 2K because there's not more information on it. And I think it now looks as good as it can possibly look. It was a great pleasure to see it reanimated. Our inspiration was Walker Evans strictly, and we looked at a lot of his stuff. And our inspiration wasn't any other black and white films, but strictly photography. Framing-wise, but also in aesthetics. And whenever I found anything in corrugated iron, we stopped and shot, because I thought that was the coolest thing in black and white. And of course for Alice, that was the first time I was able to actually shoot in America. It's quite an improvised shoot. We were a tiny little crew. And I wanted to start it somewhere in the south, and we didn't really have the money to go all the way to Florida. So we traveled down, and I said, when we see the first palm trees, we'll start shooting. And that became North Carolina. So it's, for some reason, starts in Surf City, North Carolina. It was also the first road movie that I shot. That little film, Alice in the Cities, was a way for me to discover that there was a genre where I could feel like a fish in the water, and it was very liberating to shoot with such a little crew and direct sound and on the road traveling and stopping wherever I saw something that I liked and then we invent a scene there.
Did you take a lot of still photographs on that trip as well?
I was still a Polaroid photographer. And Alice in the Cities, of course, is the film where people saw for the first time the ISIC-70 land camera. We got a prototype from them. And even when the film came out, most people had never seen this camera where a picture came out and then you saw nothing and slowly it would develop in front of your eyes. So that was the big fetish of the film, that Polaroid.
But you were interestingly, you were interested in Polaroids before that. I mean, what drew you to Polaroids as opposed to Leicas or printing in a darkroom?
I loved the idea of that there only existed one. I liked the idea that you took a picture and it only existed once. Of course, you could make copies, but I never did. And I liked the idea that it was, you took it once and it existed once, and it was just one piece that was entirely related to that second that you took it. And it was, there was so much truth about the act, and there's nothing phony about a Polaroid because you can't fake anything. You can't interfere with the process, and once it's there, that's what it is. That's all you get. I really liked that, and for years I didn't do anything else. Later on, I went to larger format negatives and took photography more seriously, but at the time, that was the first camera you could actually do selfies with. The first camera you can really be very spontaneous and also give those pictures away. Sometimes, I mean, people just didn't know that you could do something and then you could hand it over to them and say, keep it.